Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, paralyzed by fear, because you felt someone watching you? Did you know that many people can't shake that feeling because the one lurking in the shadows won't let them wake up again? And what if every whisper in the dark isn't just a sound, but a warning? Today, you'll hear stories that will make your blood run cold. Each one will make you wonder, what if these horrors are real? And what if the next victim is you? Brace yourself as we delve into the deepest fears from which there is no escape.
Detective Isabella starts her day at the precinct with the familiar sound of ringing phones and the chatter of colleagues. She moves through the department with a steady pace, her eyes scanning the cluttered desks filled with case files and coffee cups. The walls are adorned with photos of missing persons and evidence boards that tell stories of violence and despair. Isabella's colleagues respect her sharp intuition and unwavering dedication to solving cases. She is known for her calm demeanor and relentless pursuit of justice. Yet today feels different. An unexplained chill permeates the air as she walks past the evidence room. Isabella brushes it off as a draft from the old windows, but cannot shake the feeling that something is amiss. It is not just the cold that sends shivers down her spine. There is an energy in the room that feels heavy, almost as if the walls are whispering secrets meant to stay buried. As she takes her usual seat at her desk, the fluorescent lights flicker briefly. She glances up instinctively, searching for the source, but finds only shadows dancing along the walls. The unease lingers in her chest. She shakes her head, dismissing the sensation as fatigue. Isabella dives into her work, reviewing cold cases and following up on leads. The mundane tasks ground her in reality, but the nagging feeling persists. Each time she glances at the clock, time appears to crawl. A fleeting shadow catches her eye in the corner of her vision, causing her heart to race. She turns quickly, but finds nothing there. Her mind races with thoughts of the unsolved mysteries that haunt her department. The dark corners of her world are beginning to blur with something far more sinister. As she types notes into her computer, she cannot shake the feeling that the ordinary world she inhabits is on the brink of shattering, revealing a darkness she cannot yet comprehend. The scene was bleak as Detective Isabella approached the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. A sense of foreboding hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The sun barely penetrated the overcast sky, casting an eerie pallor over the surroundings. As she stepped inside the dimly lit space, the metallic scent of blood hit her nostrils, sending a jolt of adrenaline through her veins. The body lay sprawled on the cold concrete floor, surrounded by shattered glass and debris. The victim, a young woman, appeared lifeless, yet there was an unmistakable tension in her expression. Her wide eyes were frozen in a look of sheer terror, as if she had witnessed something unimaginable. Isabella's heart raced as she knelt down to examine the body. Burned into the victim's skin were strange ancient symbols that seemed to writhe and shift under the faint light. The texture of the charred markings was almost alive, a grotesque tapestry of horror that drew Isabella closer. She traced the outlines with her eyes, trying to make sense of the incomprehensible. What could these symbols mean? Each symbol was a riddle, a piece of a puzzle that taunted her with its complexity. Isabella felt a growing dread settle in her stomach as she realized that no one in the precinct would have the answers. The symbols were unlike anything she had encountered in her years of service. This was not just a murder, it was a message from a world beyond her understanding. The horror of the scene seeped into her bones as she stood up, taking a step back. The realization that she was now embroiled in something dark and sinister sent chills down her spine. This was not merely a crime scene, it was a gateway to a realm filled with malevolence. With each passing moment, the dread intensified as the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to whisper secrets meant to remain hidden. Isabella knew she was only beginning to scratch the surface of a mystery that would plunge her into the heart of darkness. Days turned into nights as Detective Isabella continued her investigation. Each new discovery led her deeper into a labyrinth of terror. The second victim was found in an abandoned church. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness as she stepped inside. Candles flickered in the corners, casting long shadows that danced ominously across the cracked walls. The victim, a middle-aged man, lay sprawled on the altar, his eyes wide open in eternal horror. Once again, ancient symbols marred his skin, marking him as another pawn in this sinister game. The symbols were identical to those of the first victim, etched with a precision that suggested a ritualistic purpose. Isabella's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the chilling pattern. This was no coincidence. Each murder was a piece of a gruesome puzzle that was slowly revealing itself. With each crime scene, Isabella's paranoia grew. She felt invisible eyes on her every movement, as if the darkness surrounding the cases was watching her closely. The shadows whispered louder, urging her to turn back, but she pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. The psychological toll was immense. Sleepless nights filled with vivid nightmares tormented her mind. Each morning she awoke to the suffocating weight of dread pressing down on her chest. A third victim was discovered in a nearby forest. The remnants of a bonfire surrounded the body, suggesting a gathering of sorts. Symbols were carved into the trees, marking the area as a sacred ground for the secret society she had started to suspect. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and something else. Something ancient and foreboding. Isabella felt a shift in the atmosphere, a sense of being ensnared in a web of dark forces. As she pieced together the clues, she found herself questioning everything. The society's influence loomed large in her mind. Who were they, and what did they seek? The symbols seemed to mock her, as if they held the answers just out of reach. Each step forward felt like a descent into madness, yet she could not turn away from the path ahead. The truth was lurking in the shadows, and Isabella was determined to bring it into the light. The unsettling sensation of being watched began to seep into every corner of Isabella's investigation. It started subtly. One evening, as she reviewed files at her desk, she noticed a figure lurking in the shadows outside her window. When she peered through the glass, the figure had vanished, leaving her pulse racing and her mind spinning with questions. Who were they? Why were they watching her? As days turned into restless nights, Isabella began to receive cryptic warnings. A slip of paper slid under her office door with a single phrase scrawled in jagged handwriting: "Turn back or suffer." The message sent a cold shiver down her spine. It was a clear threat, yet the identity of the sender remained shrouded in mystery. The feeling of isolation deepened. She shared her concerns with her colleagues, but their dismissive attitudes only fueled her paranoia. Isabella's sense of danger escalated when she noticed a black car tailing her on her way home. The driver remained hidden behind darkened windows, but the feeling of being pursued was palpable. Tightening her grip on the steering wheel, she took a series of unexpected turns, hoping to shake off her follower. The chase felt surreal as adrenaline surged through her veins, but ultimately she escaped into the safety of her apartment. That night, sleep eluded her. Each creak of the old building felt like a warning. She was utterly alone. The world outside seemed to conspire against her as shadows crept closer. Then came the nightmares. She dreamed of ancient symbols and dark figures chanting in a language she could not understand. Each dream left her gasping for breath as she awoke to find herself drenched in sweat. The atmosphere grew thick with dread. In the days that followed, Isabella encountered more members of the secret society. Their faces were obscured by hoods, and their presence exuded an ominous aura. They whispered among themselves, casting furtive glances in her direction. It was a silent acknowledgement of the threat they posed. Every meeting felt like a confrontation with the unknown. It became clear to Isabella that she was treading on dangerous ground. The society was not merely a collection of individuals, it was a force that sought to silence her. Each encounter heightened her resolve, but also intensified her fear. She realized she could trust no one, not even those closest to her. The isolation was suffocating, and the danger palpable. The darkness was closing in, and Isabella was determined to fight back, even if it meant confronting the very forces that sought to destroy her. As Detective Isabella delved deeper into the harrowing investigation, the victims left behind messages that transcended the boundaries of the earthly realm. The first chilling message came in the form of a blood-soaked piece of parchment found clutched in the lifeless hand of the first victim. The words scrawled in a frantic script were barely legible, yet they spoke of a darkness rising from the depths of despair. "The shadows come for you" was all it read, but it resonated with an otherworldly weight that sent a jolt of terror through Isabella's spine. The subsequent victims, too, seemed to communicate with her from beyond, leaving behind remnants of their final thoughts. The second victim had an intricate pattern drawn in ash beside him, resembling a twisted spiral that mesmerized and horrified Isabella. As she stared at it, visions of an ancient ceremony flickered in her mind, images of hooded figures chanting in a forgotten language. The intensity of the experience left her breathless, and she felt an inexplicable connection to the souls trapped between worlds. Each message grew more cryptic and intense, weaving a narrative of dread that tightened around her like a noose. The whispers of the dead echoed in her mind, urging her to decipher their warnings before it was too late. Isabella found herself poring over books of ancient lore and symbols, desperately trying to unlock the secrets hidden within the markings burned into flesh. With every revelation, her sense of unease multiplied. The messages took a toll on her psyche, blurring the lines between reality and the supernatural. Isabella's nights were filled with nightmares, where she was pursued by shadowy figures that melted into the darkness, their voices a haunting chorus of despair. The weight of the victims' messages pressed down on her, a constant reminder of the sinister forces at play. With each passing day, Isabella felt the grip of the supernatural tighten around her. The realization that the messages were not merely cries for help, but dire warnings of an impending doom began to consume her. The knowledge that she was not just chasing a murderer, but confronting a malevolent entity, sent waves of fear crashing over her. Each symbol, each whisper, seemed to foretell a fate she could no longer ignore. Isabella's investigation led her to a decaying mansion, the rumored hideout of the secret society. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting an eerie glow that illuminated the overgrown foliage surrounding the property. As she approached, dread pooled in her stomach. The air was thick with an unnatural silence, broken only by the distant rustle of leaves. Her heart raced as she crept toward a broken window, its glass jagged and sharp like the symbols that haunted her thoughts. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy, charged with an inexplicable energy. Shadows flickered against the walls, seemingly alive. Isabella's breath quickened as she spotted flickering candlelight in the center of the room. She pressed herself against the cold wall, peering through the darkness. A circle of hooded figures stood around an elaborate altar, their chants echoing through the air, a language that sent shivers down her spine. The closer she got, the clearer the ritual became. The altar was adorned with fresh blood and strange artifacts, each pulsating with a grotesque life of its own. Isabella felt the pull of darkness, a tangible force trying to drag her into its depths. But she couldn't turn back. Now she had to stop whatever was about to unfold. As the chants grew louder, the figures raised their arms, and the air crackled with energy. A surge of fear coursed through Isabella as she realized they were summoning a demon. The room warped around her, the shadows elongating and twisting into unfathomable shapes. The very essence of terror began to manifest, swirling like a storm ready to break. Isabella felt a surge of adrenaline, her instincts screaming to act. She slipped through the shadows, her heart pounding in rhythm with the ominous incantations. Just as the summoning reached its peak, a blinding flash erupted from the altar. Isabella stumbled back, her mind racing as the supernatural forces began to tear at the fabric of reality. This was no longer just an investigation, it was a fight for her very soul, and she had to confront the nightmare that lay before her. The air crackled with a sinister energy as the summoning reached its climax. A dark vortex spiraled above the altar, pulsating with malevolent intent. Isabella stood frozen in place, her heart pounding like a war drum. The shadows coalesced into a form, grotesque and terrifying, as the demon emerged from the swirling mass. Its skin was an unnatural hue, mottled and slick, glistening as though it were submerged in the depths of a swamp. Jagged horns spiraled from its forehead, framing a face that was both haunting and grotesquely fascinating. Eyes like smoldering coals burned with an insatiable hunger, locking onto Isabella with a predatory gaze that sent chills coursing through her veins. As the demon unfurled its leathery wings, the very atmosphere seemed to tremble. Isabella could barely breathe, the weight of fear pressing down on her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet she found herself rooted to the spot, paralyzed by the horror unfolding before her. The demon let out a guttural roar, a sound that reverberated through her bones, shattering her thoughts into fragments of panic. With a sudden movement, the demon lunged towards her, its claws extended, each talon sharp and glistening like obsidian. Isabella barely managed to dodge to the side, adrenaline igniting her senses. The world around her blurred as she fought to escape the creature's grasp. Her heart raced, and her thoughts spiraled into chaos. This was no longer just a matter of investigating a series of murders. It was a fight for her life against a being that thrived on fear and despair. In the midst of the physical struggle, Isabella faced an even greater battle within. Visions of the victims flashed before her eyes, faces twisted in terror, mouths silently screaming for help. They were not just reminders of her failure to protect them, they were her motivation to confront this horror. She could not let their suffering be in vain. Gathering her resolve, she reached for the talisman she had salvaged from the ruins of an ancient book, a sliver of hope against the overwhelming darkness. With a fierce cry, Isabella brandished the talisman, its light illuminating the room. The demon recoiled, its eyes narrowing in fury. She felt a surge of power, a connection to the very forces that opposed this creature. The confrontation escalated, a dance of light and dark, as Isabella fought against the tide of despair threatening to drown her. Each strike of the talisman sent shockwaves through the air, battling against the demon's unholy presence. The struggle was brutal, both physically and psychologically. Isabella felt the weight of the darkness pressing down on her, whispering fears that threatened to unravel her sanity. But amidst the chaos, she clung to her determination, the voices of the victims echoing in her mind. She would not succumb to the fear. With every ounce of strength, she faced the demon, refusing to let it claim her as yet another victim of its insatiable appetite for terror. The confrontation reached its zenith, a clash of wills that would determine not just her fate, but the fate of countless souls ensnared in the web of darkness. The air hung heavy with an unsettling stillness as the confrontation with the demon came to a climactic end. Detective Isabella emerged from the chaotic remnants of the summoning, her body trembling and her mind reeling. The talisman, a beacon of light, had pierced through the darkness, scattering the malevolent energy that had filled the room. Yet the victory felt hollow, as the echoes of the demon's wrath lingered in her ears, a haunting reminder of the terror she had faced. Physically, Isabella bore the scars of her encounter. Bruises marred her skin, and exhaustion weighed heavily upon her. But it was the psychological toll that gnawed at her spirit. Nightmares filled her sleep, visions of the demon's grotesque form and the anguished faces of the victims replayed in a relentless cycle. Each morning, she awoke drenched in sweat, the remnants of fear clinging to her like a second skin. The investigation had transformed her, leaving her grappling with the knowledge that darkness could manifest in ways she had never imagined. In the aftermath, the secret society crumbled. Whispers of their dark rituals circulated through the community, and law enforcement launched a thorough investigation. Isabella felt a fleeting sense of relief as the once powerful group was dismantled, its members arrested or vanished. Yet, a gnawing doubt remained. Had they truly been eradicated, or had they merely retreated into the shadows, biding their time? As the days turned into weeks, life around Isabella appeared to return to normal. The sun shone brightly, and laughter echoed in the streets. But beneath the surface, an undercurrent of unease simmered. Strange occurrences began to plague the community. Pets disappeared without a trace, and residents reported unsettling visions in the night. Isabella's heart raced as she sensed a darkness creeping back into her life. Just when she thought the horror was behind her, a chilling message arrived. An envelope slipped under her door bearing the same jagged handwriting from before. "You cannot escape the shadows." The words sent a shiver down her spine, awakening the dread that had begun to fade. The true battle was not over, and the lingering horror of what she had faced was a harbinger of future terrors yet to come.